Welcome to this week's Indie Dev Showcase, where these are the spotlight or highlight reels from the many games we play for our Wednesday night streams. Unless otherwise noted, all these games were played with press keys submitted by developers, and if you'd like me to go to your game in the future, please get in touch. We are beginning with Vaporum Lockdown. This is the sequel prequel to the first Vaporum, which was designed to be a modern take on dungeon crawling, similar to The Legend of Grimrock. And this sequel embodies basically all the positives and negatives of the first game. We are in kind of like an undersea or mysterious lab that an accident has caused robots and machinery to go amok. We are one of the remaining survivors, and we need to figure out what is happening. And of course, this sets the stage for a lot of the story events of the first game. The basics are once again on display here. You'll move around real-time style in a grid-based system, as you'll find various gear and upgrades that you'll need to stand a chance. Unlike Legend of Grimrock, you're not dealing with a party of 4 characters. Instead, you're just one person, and you'll be able to equip different weapons and kind of spells that you see in the bottom right-hand side of the screen. With combat being real-time, it leads into that kind of like a do-si-do or trying to dance around these enemies to land the necessary hits, with many enemies having area effect attacks as you saw right there. And as with the previous game, this is a title where anytime you can fight more than one opponent, or anytime you're in those group fights, you are in deep trouble, as it's very hard to kind of react and dance around when you can't see where enemies are around you. And the game definitely wants you to play it either with very high reflexes or using the pausable real time, which I am not a big fan of that kind of design, but we'll talk about that for another time. So as with the first game, again, this is handmade levels with a lot of secrets, bonuses, and potential skill builds and combinations for you to discover. And if you enjoyed the first game, you're going to enjoy this one. But if you're not a fan of this kind of old school dungeon crawling design, very crazy puzzles, lots of annoying fights to get into, then Vaporum Lockdown doesn't really do anything to kind of get around or mitigate that. This is once again old school to a fault, and you are either all in for it, or you're going to end up getting frustrated and just stop playing. And I reached my limit when I got later in the game, and once again I ran into a situation where the game forces you to fight like 3 or 4 enemies in the same area, and the controls and just general design are not set up for that. Again, this is why pausal real time is so important, in order to be able to stand a chance and just be able to react fast enough to these enemies. And like I said, the game does everything that the first game did right, as well as what the game didn't work for a lot of people. And if you were hoping for any kind of structural or gameplay improvements along those lines, you're not going to find that here. But I would still suggest that if you were a fan of the first game, to definitely give this one a check, as you're going to find more to love if it did work for you. Now we turn to Gestalt, Steam, and Cinder. This was played during the Summer Steam Festival, and this is as you can tell, very pixel art driven action-adventure game that leans into kind of Metroidvania, and maybe even kind of like that RPG Igavania style that we've mentioned before. Our story is that we are a bounty hunter who has awoken up after a serious mishap, and their town is being plagued by bandits and some very mysterious things going on. And it's up to us to, go out and do some clearing out. So you have your main town where you explore, gather clues, buy and get upgrades, etc., etc. And then you go into the various dungeon/action stages to beat up any bad guys that you see. And combat is a mix of melee and range, as you're able to dodge around attacks, shoot enemies, and I'm sure you're going to gain more abilities and powers as the game goes on. Combat felt very responsive to what we played, and as you can see, you can level up and I'm curious about what they're going to do in terms of upgrades and special abilities as the game goes on. And there was definitely a lot to like about this one. The only, I think, real problem is that we really didn't get a huge amount of look in this game from the demo. The demo was about, I think we spent 20 minutes or so on it, just enough to get through this first area and fight the first boss. And the art, again, in this game is very impressive, as we see this guy mutate right there. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing more of this game when it is released, and hopefully we'll get some more news about it. For our next game, we have Alien Hominid Invasion. This is the latest game from the Behemoth, and it's essentially a roguelite-ish take on the classic run-and-gun gameplay. I guess this could be described as Slay the Hominid. The story for this one is that we are playing as the rest of the alien species from Alien Hominid who have come to Earth to save their friend, and get in the way of lots of FBI agents, robots, and more. Now, we play this during the Steam Summer Festival, and the game is available for multiplayer, I believe, but the version we play, I don't think we had access to it. The general concept is that there is a lot of persistent elements in terms of unlocking new guns and perks for your various hominids, based on how well you play and what areas you go to. Each area is going to be kind of procedurally generated, and it's built around choosing various random objectives for you to achieve. So right now I'm trying to get some items, another thing could be kill X amount of enemies, and you have to do all this within a certain time limit in order to complete the area. The longer you take, or the longer your game gets, the more dangerous it becomes, well, of course, the greater the chance of loot. And you're free to decide your path through each area, with the ultimate goal is to reach the headquarters, where you'll fight some big nasty boss. So there is definitely a lot of potential here, and I always like this idea of co-op roguelike or roguelite elements to games. Now, with that said, though, the version we played was a demo for the festival, so we didn't really get to see a whole lot of the game, and the grinding to get more gear and better weapons may be a little troublesome. I was playing this on one of the higher difficulty, so I don't know if they kind of shift things or give you a greater chance of getting more rewards and make the game harder. With that said, I think there is certainly potential here. And curious to see what people think about this, and I would definitely want to play the full version when it is released. With that said, we're going to take a quick break now, and when we come back, we have 3 more games for this week's showcase. And now for a quick thank you to our current Patreon supporters. And if you're interested in my books on design, they are available at most major retailers. 20 Essential Games to Study is for first-time developers looking to be inspired, and the Game Design Deep Dive series covers the history and philosophy of major genres, with horror coming later in 2021. Now up, we have Strings Theory. This is another festival demo that we tried out. And this is a puzzle game, where our main objective is collect all the various string, as you can see around, and get to the end of the level in the process. So the main mechanic of this one is that we have to set up kind of platform stuff to move around, and we can also push down these various walls, which will turn into potential bridges. But of course, the consequence is that if you want to move a platform or something across that gap, you have to do it before you start moving that, or you'll be in deep trouble. And from the demo that we play, this feels very much like a very black and white kind of puzzle game. That there is really only one quote-unquote true solution in order to get through these levels, or the perfect solution to get all the items, get it all, you move on to the next. And it looked like a decent game, but it's not the kind of puzzle solving that I like to see in some of these titles. And there didn't seem to be kind of like an overarching narrative or connection between the levels. It was just, do all the levels in order, and then go to the next, and repeat until you're done how many puzzles there are in this game. So, if you're not a puzzle fan, I don't think Strings Theory is going to be for you. But if you are one and looking for another one to kind of melt your brain around, then I would say give this one a check. Now we have Gone Viral. This was played during the Steam Festival. It is currently out in early access. This is an action roguelike, where the general concept is that it is the far future, and of course, becoming a reality star is now about gladiatorial combat, as you fight for likes, fans, and loot. And part of this game is about trying to get your fans to send you help, which if this was actually accurate to my case, all my fans would tell me to get good and make things harder for me. So, if you aren't a fan of, memes and the whole, streamer culture kind of idea, then you may not enjoy this one from the get-go. But, our general gameplay, again, this is action roguelike, so you are able to move, dash, and attack your way through a myriad of enemies in procedurally generated levels. As you play and you perform challenges to get more fans, they'll be able to send you better gear or better items to help you out. You'll also find gadgets and bonus things that will change the properties of your character, such as giving you the ability to float over traps, do more damage, and again, a lot of the stuff we come to know and love from action roguelike design. From what I played of the demo, this does feel very much like another game in this kind of style, be it from Hades, Monolith, Dreamscaper, you name it. The kind of Smash TV framework behind this game, I do like it. And the game does hint at allowing you to add more challenges and more content as you make progress through. And I would say again, if you are a fan of action roguelike design, there's definitely something here. Now, please keep in mind that the footage you're seeing is from the festival that we played. I don't know what the current state of the game is at this moment in time in early access. But I would say definitely keep an eye on this one for fans of action roguelikes. For our final game of this video, this is No Place for Bravery, another Steam Festival demo. And this one is kind of positioned to be a very challenging kind of action, more like action RPG with a greater focus on the action side. The big aspect of this game is that it is focused more on parrying and countering enemies rather than just pure old aggression. Every enemy has a stamina bar, and so do you. That was the yellow bar underneath. When their stamina is out, they are stunned, allowing you to basically just wail on them. And the same thing goes for you. If you run out of stamina from getting hit or failing your parries and blocks, you will be incredibly punished for it in this game. Now, from the demo that we played, it is definitely going for that kind of pixel style from Hyper Light Drifter, but where Hyper Light was more about kind of the high speed play and combat, dashing around such, this one is far more methodical. And it does kind of have that soul-like quality to it, in that being rash and button mashing is going to get you killed very fast in this game. And instead, you need to take your time, read enemy patterns, and do your best to get those hits in when you need to. And as you saw right there, I didn't do that. And yes, enemies do get unblockable hits as well. Now, the thing about the parrying in this game is that it is very precise. As you saw me kind of play around with my shield there, you only have maybe a millisecond or maybe half a second of actual parrying that you can do. And my worry about this game is twofold. One, because of the 2D style, I feel it may lead to some of the hitboxing on attacks to be a little bit weird in terms of how they're able to get you. The other point is that the focus on parrying definitely draws parallels to Sekiro. And with that, it means that if you do not get good at the one thing this game demands of you, in this case being the parrying, you will not be able to make progress. There doesn't seem to be an out or an option B if you're not able to get those parrying and those punishes done. So definitely keep that in mind for those of you who are interested in this game. But with that said, I do think there is potential for No Place for Bravery. Again, I have certainly played my fair share of Souls-like style games here, and I'm always looking for another one to, get good at, or attempt to get good at. So, with all that said, we'll wrap up this week's Spotlight here. As always, you'll find links to their store pages in the description down below. If you let me tickle your game for a future stream and video, please get in touch. We do these streams weekly, Wednesday nights, and all of our game streams are around 9:30 ET right here on the channel. With all that said, as always, check out our Discord and Patreon link down below, and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where some of the art and science of games. Until next time, take care.